All right, we're back with more NFL coverage, and in this one, I'll be covering all of the developments surrounding Super Bowl week and some that have come through after the Super Bowl ended. I'm obviously very late to this. I should have already gotten around to this, but that's okay. There is a lot, and I mean a whole hell of a lot to get into. Like, similarly to the last one, you have some coach hirings, and I don't think any real firings that might be too crazy out there at the moment. But then you've also just got a fair blend of just very wild incidents off the field involving several different players. But to get it straight into it, despite all of that, we have to start out with a hire as the Titans would nab Gus Bradley as their new defensive coordinator. And Gus Bradley is a man who has been around, especially when it comes to the NFC South. His ass has now returned there after last being the defensive coordinator for the Colts in 2024. And I will say that Gus Bradley has consistently been one of those guys who's going to be much better as a defensive coordinator than he ever really was as a head coach. I mean, all you have to do is take a look his 4-year tenure in Jacksonville as their head coach. No, the roster wasn't constructed very well, and you can blame a lot of that on just some of the scouting at that point. Dudes really thought at that time that Justin Blackmon was a round one caliber talent at the wide receiver position. And some of that came to his own on his own volition when it came to maturity issues and things like that. And that's just one player, of course. You're coming off the tail end of Maurice Jones-Drew's tenure there as well. So there's a lot of overall movement on that roster as it is. And maybe the first year, maybe the first couple of years, you weren't going to give Gus Bradley too much flack for that. But to finish his tenure there with a 14-48 record, it's definitely, for a 4-year sample size, it's probably one of the worst winning percentages a coach could have in that time. And so, to this point, he has yet to see that kind of status as a head coach again. But before that, interestingly enough, as the Legion of Boom was starting, he led a top defense in Seattle in 2012. Interestingly enough, I did not know that he was a part of the staff. That is definitely an interesting piece of history to learn about, especially considering what the Seahawks have just pulled off to this point. So, again, he's going to have a lot more experience and be a lot more effective on a coaching staff holding that down. The thing is, similarly to, some stops in LA with the Chargers and also in the start of his career in Indianapolis, it's like outside of a couple of pieces on that Titans defense, there is just a lot that needs to be revitalized on that front. Like the linebacking core needs a tremendous amount of work. That goes without saying. Obviously, Jeffrey Simmons Jr. is going to be the main guy on that defensive line. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. But pretty much everything else is a question mark. The secondary, of course, could be massively improved. I mean, even when you look at a guy like L'Jarius Sneed, who they brought in to be that anchor at the cornerback position for them. He was just coming off of that tremendous year with the Chiefs being one of the more well-rounded cornerbacks in the league. Even then, I was saying as such about his caliber of play and how he could get it done as a blitzer, how sound he was at tackling, and then also how intent he was when it came to any type of coverage you asked of him in that situation. Now, injuries as well have taken a little bit of a toll on him, but he has not been able to regain that kind of production to this point. They also had Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs at some point rotating around the safety position. And ironically enough, Quandre Diggs, I believe, left the team earlier in the season, rejoined the Seahawks. Ironically enough, so it's like, damn, you just cannot hold that down whatsoever. It's a damn shame. And Bradley, I mean, we can say a lot about him being a great defensive coordinator, but outside of Jeffrey Simmons Jr., he doesn't have a ton of pieces to work with right now. Although I will say, with the way that they've talked about some of the other up-and-coming guys, like Oladejo, the rookie they drafted last year, who honestly did not get as much concentration, but it makes sense. He's a rookie at that time. That could be a player to watch out for, but you're going to have to stack together a whole lot more, I will admit. So we will most certainly see about that. But, geez, man. The NFL, at a point, would create the Paul J. Tagliabue Academic Excellence Award in honor of the commissioner of the league who recently passed away. Held that position from 1987 to 2004, obviously. And, that's definitely always a good thing to have that kind of, award in this case, be commemorated to someone again who had as large of an impact on the overall game. Undoubtedly, when you look at anybody covering the NFL, it doesn't get too much more impactful outside of him unless you're looking at the founding fathers of the league. And you could argue his influence as a commissioner during that 17, 18-year stretch is comparable to some of the more well-renowned commissioners in other major sports leagues all over the place. That is the impact that his legacy has carried on to this point. So to have that expanded to academic excellence is probably something that was inevitable, but I guess from a timing standpoint, they felt like it was just due for something like this to happen. So I can understand that. The NFL has essentially come out and said that there could be potential rule changes to the Rooney Rule. Now, obviously, the Rooney Rule was implemented pretty much like late 2000s, early 2010s, essentially to ensure that there is some form of reasonable representation of minority candidates in any sort of coaching predicament. Namely, teams are required, every single team is required to have at least a set number of interviews with minority candidates for head coaching positions, for coordinator positions, and they have to conduct this before they come to make a decision on their next move. They cannot and should not try to circumvent those kinds of requirements. But until those interviews are done, they can't proceed in hiring anybody. So those are things that need to be done, which is why the Rooney Rule is in place. Obviously, for decades beforehand, you rarely saw minority coaches of any kind involved in the coaching staff or even present on a coaching staff, even with the league at that point shifting to having a higher concentration of black or minority players in some of the most recent decades, I should say. It was not always like that, obviously. You go back to the 1920s, and while some of the, more historical players are going to be looked at in a certain way, people don't recognize that Jim Thorpe, for instance, obviously well-renowned founding father, one of the first original superstars in the NFL. He was Native American. He was not white. not to use that in any sort of way, but essentially it was predominantly white at that time. And again, over the years, you get towards the 1980s and further, it's been predominantly black. More minority players have been involved in this, and you have a higher percentage of concentration there across the NFL. While still, to this point of time, not having as many black or minority head coaches, coordinators to match up with that. So it was implemented in, again, at the very least, in theory, the idea is to, have that overall concentration of those dynamics level out over time, but it has not always been working in that way. Not early 2000s, I should say. As this quote from the Athletic Business Journal states, quote, "The Rooney Rule was adopted in 2003 and requires every team with a head coaching, coordinator, or general manager opening to interview at least 2 minority candidates before it can make a hire. Teams must also interview at least 1 minority candidate for the position of quarterbacks coach, according to ESPN." End quote. So, again, in thinking, it intends to at least give a fair shot to other positions and other demographics here than the usual. That is the goal, to, have a good number of minority members of the NFL in coexistence and on a somewhat level playing field with other members of the NFL who might be of a different background. But as I said, it hasn't always been that effective. Now, you can chalk it up to a number of things this year, but the only one of a minority background that was hired into a coaching role, coordinator role, etc., the only one was Robert Saleh. He is of Lebanese descent, as this article also mentions here. And I feel like I've already heard that before, but I digress. Only one. And there were 10 head coach openings. There were numerous coordinator openings, after some firings took place. So, again, you could take that in any way, shape, or form that you want to. But at that point, it is yet another year where the Rooney Rule just doesn't seem to do much at all in terms of swinging the pendulum. So, there could be a lot of different thoughts running around in that particular situation. And I suppose something at some point just pressed them to say, you know what, maybe we need to reconsider this. As Goodell said, Commissioner Roger Goodell said via this article here, quote, "We have to continue to evaluate everything we're doing and every aspect of the hiring process. How do we professionalize it to the best of our ability? I think some of the changes we made was giving more time for the interviews, but we're going to see that from year to year where you have different outcomes, and that's something we've got to look at. But we're going to see that from time to time, and that's something we've got to just evaluate so you can learn and then continue to focus on what we can do better across 32 clubs in the league." End quote. Any number of things could be on the table for that, to be honest with you. Giving more time for the interviews, I would be interested to see in what sense he means. Because you would expect that these interviews for anybody, honestly, quite frankly, like, In terms of duration, in terms of how long they actually last on that given day, there is no reason to, again, even if you think that you're in a situation where you have a sure hire or a guy that needs the race in terms of where your preference lies throughout the offseason or even after a job immediately opens up. Even in those situations where you think you have a sure thing, you're going to spend as much time as possible to get through all the details, investigate and explore every single aspect of that candidate, not just as a general coach or a general asset to your team, but as a genuine person. Is he actually going to work well across the entire organization? Is he going to fit the culture that you're trying to build? That is obviously one of the more important factors here. So that is going to take a great amount of time, and it may take multiple interviews. But I guess, does Goodell mean that like the window in terms of when teams can go through these interviews, or I guess the set number of days that it should take for them to go through the interview process? Or are they trying to limit that? Or are they trying to expand it? It would be interesting to see what Goodell had to say on it. Because this is, like, these quotes are, they had media day. He was present for that. So I would honestly be very intrigued to see if someone asked him about that there as well as a sort of follow-up question. Because there are a number of different ways you can go with that particular aspect of it right there. But, yeah, he's not necessarily wrong. Especially with, so many other people in the league having their job security pretty much intact to this point. And with just 10 openings, like, there's not going to be a ton of room for overall movement. So it just makes that, from that standpoint, increasingly difficult. But it's still got to take something. As is already understood, and as the article also says, there are only 3 black head coaches in the NFL currently to this point. And a couple of them are guys that have only recently started out their time as head coaches. DeMeco Ryans is a recent first-time head coach, and Aaron Glenn is a recent first-time head coach. And to think that the Jets were obviously terrible this season, he was very much in danger of losing his job after year 1, just like Jerod Mayo did. The Jets are giving him another chance, and they are a team that honestly should stick it out with Aaron Glenn for the long run, despite what other people may say about it. Because this is not just an Aaron Glenn thing. Yes, it's a terrible look to constantly get blown out by 20 points as well. And just have your defense completely fall off a cliff from one season to the next. But you need everything on that team right now. They need so much help in so many other places that it's like, nigga. It's like, come on, bro. Are we being serious, dude? But I digress. Yeah, though. It'll be interesting to see how the league continues to move forward from there. But, they got to check for everything, too. Even if a team will not come out and say it all the time, there are some cases, there are definitely some cases, where you may have teams, again, continue to just, not continue, they'll do the entire interview process with all the minority candidates that they may be looking into, just to immediately pivot, not even consider those guys at all, and just move forward in a completely different direction with what their intent was in the first place. Just making the Rooney Rule useless in that regard. Goodell, some of his commentary would allude to the fact that essentially he doesn't believe that there's a practice going around where teams are just trying to check off the proverbial list of boxes just to pass all the requisite steps and proceed forward with making their hire from the very jump. He doesn't think that that's happening at all. I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility. But again, even then, the idea of the Rooney Rule, to his credit, is something that makes sense now. Now again, one can say, oh, this is silly. Why does the Rooney Rule need to exist? Why do we need to force teams to include and account for minority voices and minority figures in coaching, coordinator, manager, and even quarterback coaching roles? Why do we have to do this? Why does this need to be in writing and documentation like this? If, again, throughout the entire league's history, especially when you look at when the overall shift happened, if teams were doing this from the jump, this wouldn't have to be a thing, because you would be able to trust that grown-ass men in a changing society would embrace such a change, such a wide landscape of overall candidates, of varying talents, of varying backgrounds, to be able to do whatever job it is that they may be trying to fill up. Now again, the social aspect of things, especially when you look at everything in the, civil rights era and beyond, the segregation era and beyond, those tensions obviously had a major impact on the way some of these organizations were run. Like, there was a situation that I kept hearing about with, I think it was George Marshall for the Commanders, if I'm not mistaken. Man was so against having black players on his team. And it took him being ousted from his position for the Commanders to finally go ahead and include black players on the roster. It's been a long battle over the years just to reach that point. And the Rooney Rule, it does, again, in theory, do a great thing by providing at least a chance to get in the door. Teams are still free to make whatever decision it is that they want. But honestly, the Rooney Rule, even though it may not make sense from that standpoint for some people, it is yet another layer of the long-standing battle for proper and genuine inclusion in the game. It doesn't really get any simpler than that. So again, we'll see. They always have their annual league meeting. They can have different negotiations and things go down. We'll see how it goes, though. Honestly, I can talk about these three things in tandem. I ain't even gonna lie. I will talk about these three things in tandem together, because I genuinely don't know what either of these three fucking teams are doing. So I'll just rattle it all off together and combine this segment here, because the Giants, the Jets, and the Cardinals all need some fucking help. All three of these teams, in moves not too far apart from each other, New York, well, the Giants, I should say, hired Matt Nagy. The Jets hired Frank Reich. And the Cardinals hired Nathaniel Hackett, all as offensive coordinators. So we have Matt Nagy, Frank Reich, and Nathaniel Hackett all back in offensive coordinator roles in the big 2026. What the fuck are we doing, first and foremost? Do none of these teams recognize? Just think about this for a second. All three of these teams, although you can say the Giants, with the way that their roster is constructed, the young talent that they have between Tagliabue, between Neighbors, between Dart, Robinson, Wan'Dale Robinson can also factor into that. I will say that out of the three, they probably have the best offense, or had the best offense last season. And even the Cardinals, you could argue with Jacoby Brissett, they had a few games here and there where they were trying to go toe-to-toe with teams and still got their asses kicked. But I digress. Nonetheless, especially looking at the Jets, these teams were in the bottom half of overall offensive production last year. And it's not even close. Like, I can't understand why, if you're in that situation, you are at the bottom of the barrel and you think that somehow, some way, either of those three are going to make you better. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me, man. For the Jets to get Frank Reich in this situation is just absolutely ridiculous. Like, bruh, the fact that they were already the 29th overall offense last season was just terrible completely. And a lot of that does have to deal with overall flaws in the roster. Like, again, you, for a good reason, honestly, take a chance and a short-term flyer on Justin Fields. And, I mean, he's going to be in his last year of that deal entering this season. So you'll have to see how things go, I suppose. He had y'all fooled in game one and then proceeded to just completely decline and generate the same things he's accustomed to doing on the football field. Y'all already understood that the man struggled to pass the ball, and shit, it got worse. This man could not move the ball more than 10 yards down the field. He legitimately struggled to do that all season long. Honestly, if you look at general NFL history, the passing attack, especially with Fields under center and even after that, because again, you're relying on an older Tyrod Taylor, you're relying on an inexperienced Brady Cook, their passing attack had to have been one of the worst in NFL history. Especially across this long of a season. Like, there is just absolutely no excuse for any of that shit. Any of it. It's crazy. And to think their rushing offense was honestly okay. Okay. Like, they should have just let Breece Hall move on to the Chiefs, man. They really should have. And that's a great time to bring up the Chiefs. Because you're now, bringing Matt Nagy over to the Giants, in this case. The Giants themselves, again, the numbers don't do it justice. The fact that both Tagliabue and Neighbors, for as great as they were offensively, they both went out with season-ending injuries early as well. So that's going to put them behind the 8 ball. Yet they still finished as the 17th best offense in the league. So very middle of the pack, despite having a 4-13 record. And in theory, if you can get those bodies healthy, maybe from the Giants' perspective, no matter who the offensive coordinator is, that talent is going to do its job on the football field. And from that standpoint, if they have enough faith in that, which they probably should, then maybe this Matt Nagy hire is nothing for them. But at the same time, you have to look at the man's resume. You can't sit here and say that Matt Nagy is going to completely change. Well, you can't say with a guarantee that he's going to change the production of this team in a positive way. Because he's going to be the one calling the plays. And you saw just how things were in Kansas City. Now again, in context, Andy Reid handled a lot of the play calling. He did. So you can't grill Matt Nagy too much because it was Andy Reid handling most of that responsibility. It's not like Matt Nagy was lifeless either. And some of the shit that this man was trying to pull, where you are literally making a Patrick Mahomes-led team look so mediocre, so anemic at times, that ironically enough, in one of the worst games of the season, one could argue, you had the Sunday Night Football matchup against the fucking Giants, and they saw just how horrible the play calling was that night, to where they lost that game in just such an Bro, you see that game. And, I mean, granted, the Giants played worse. But it's not like the Chiefs were just lining it up all over the scoreboard either. They escaped by the skin of their teeth. Because the Giants, at that point, starting Russell Wilson, were just in a completely different funk here. And, that was the game where they decided, okay, we're just going to bench him. For Jackson Dart, give this thing a shot, because we can't do any more of this. You see how Nagy and Reid called that game, and you still think it a good idea to, in the very next offseason, hire this nigga. Okay. But he does have pieces to work with. And I will say that, the Jets in this situation with Reich, they got to search for him. You genuinely don't know what's going to happen with Breece Hall in this offseason. But, I mean, he is knocked down on a contract, so that may help them out a little bit. You have Garrett Wilson knocked down on a contract, but okay, who else are you throwing the fucking ball to? You have some solid young linemen, but are you even sure they're going to take the next step to become even better next season and prevent all the damn pressure from reaching the backfield as consistently as it did last year? You can't guarantee any of that. And again, as long as health allows it, the Giants could still be a dangerous team. But for the Cardinals, man, because with all that going around, with you potentially losing Kyler Murray, with you having some talent to use, especially Trey McBride, especially Marvin Harrison Jr., and now I suppose Michael Wilson, it's like you maybe have a little bit to work with here. But you saw how trash it was with Petzing. And again, Mike LaFleur, the recent hire for the Cardinals, is going to have a shot at being the play caller. In fact, he came out and said as much, that he's going to handle the play calls. So it is a good test to see what he's going to do. Yet for an assistant role, technically, in this case, because he'll be the offensive coordinator in name, Why is Nathaniel Hackett your fucking hire? Now, yes, in all honesty, Hackett, when he was at the peak of his powers as an offensive coordinator, he and Aaron Rodgers had that synchronicity. That's why he consistently, Rodgers did, went to bat for this nigga before he proceeded to pull off football terrorism with the Jets. He could still have that ability to get the most out of any quarterback, regardless of who it is that they may be. And that's a good quality to have in a true offensive coordinator. It's just that, okay, what fucking quarterback are you getting? What quarterback are you trying to acquire in the offseason? Do they try to go for one in free agency? Do they try to enter into the draft and pick up one that way? If so, they're probably going to have to do it late. The way different mock drafts have been looking, they are not high. They are not high on Todd Simpson. And naturally, Dante Moore probably would have remained as the second best quarterback, I should say, in the NFL draft process if he didn't decide to return to Oregon for one more season. After all those comments came out about Dante Moore needing to do everything in his power, essentially, to avoid getting drafted by either the Raiders or the Jets. So you don't have too many good options here. And I don't think Hackett is in a situation where he's good enough to get that kind of production. Now, again, it's going to take some effort from the player as well, but he is not that good of an offensive coordinator to be expected to get that much talent out of a player in their first year. I just don't see that happening at all. And I would be utterly surprised if it did. Now, also, it's like, no matter what quarterback you get in there, Hackett has got to find a way, and LaFleur, by default as well, being the offensive play caller, you've got to find a way to get different running backs involved. Now, maybe DeMercado and Benson have proven themselves to be, some solid lead backs down the line. But if that doesn't take a step forward, I would not be mad at them trying to go and pick up the services of one in free agency or maybe buy out a trade. Because you have got to get that rushing attack picked up. Like, to look at the Cardinals now, again, with injuries to all of DeMercado, Benson, and even James Conner. It'll be interesting to see what they do with him in the offseason. There ain't much that you can do. However, even with them being down 3 running backs and playing Bam Knight serious minutes in multiple games, their asses still were not able at all to really establish themselves as a feared team on the ground. It wasn't even close. They had themselves a few overall performances where they nabbed over 100 yards on that side of the football and did have a high of 168 against the Titans, ironically enough. But of course, DeMercado has a different memory resulting from that particular game. Like, looking at them as a whole, they did run for 1,583 yards, but again, it wasn't even all that productive. Nobody on their team finished with even 3, Michael Carter, just think about this. Michael Carter Jr., finished the year as the team leader in rushing yards with 333. What is any quarterback who comes in supposed to do with that? What are they supposed to do with that? That's so lackluster. And especially if it's a rookie guy, honestly, I guess, depending on where they pick him, it could be Ty Simpson, it could be a different quarterback as they move later on. Hell, I wouldn't even mind them taking a chance on, maybe like a Taylor Green or something like that. Of course, something tells me right now, we're not even all the way in draft season. I've got to take a much better look over some mock drafts during this time after, embracing the whole of the transfer portal for that time. But, bruh, why does something tell me that hilariously they're going to opt to draft Garrett Nutzmeyer? I just have that funny feeling that they will, for some reason, now again, they shouldn't reach for his ass. And you probably aren't going to reach for his ass. But something tells me that that is the direction that they're heading in. I don't know why. But I'm thinking about it right now as I'm trying to say all this. And I'm like, okay. Like, man, it would be ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. But the Cardinals would definitely be the team to pull it off. All these hires are just like, I will say that, again, Matt Nagy's in probably the best situation with the most upside. And like Hackett and Reich on the other hand, their situations that they're walking into may vary. But as coordinators at this stage of their careers, they do not have that same kind of ability that they once did. Neither one of them. And to put that much trust in them now, in this time, in this NFL climate, it's bold. It's fucking bold, bro. I suppose that we will end up getting a chance to see things come together. Definitely between, OTAs and training camp and even the preseason as well. Again, similarly to some other guys, you just run some vanilla style offense, or at least get them in some action to see what exactly they may be able to pull off early, and then continue along with days leading up to it to build out their playbook from there. That's really going to be the goal here with all of these moves. All right, the Giants would make another hire as Dawn Aponte. Hold on, let me pull this back up for reference. She is will be hired as the Senior Vice President of Football Operations and Strategy, per ESPN from Renan and Schefter. At this point, she served previously as an NFL executive, I should say. Typically, you would see her announcing some of the later round picks on draft day. There's a lot more that goes into said job. But ultimately, she'd been in that position for years to come. And even before then, this is an experience, surprisingly, as I read, that isn't really all that new to her. As this quote from the ESPN article states, Aponte comes to the Giants with experience on both the league and team side. She has been with the league since 2017 as the chief administrator of football operations. The Delaware grad has also has previous experience working on the team side with the Miami Dolphins, Cleveland Browns, and New York Jets. Throughout her time in football, Aponte has developed expertise in matters relating to contract negotiations, salary cap management, labor and CBA issues, and day-to-day management of the football business and administration operations. End quote. Wow. To my surprise, as I first saw it, I'm like, okay, so she definitely knows what she's doing. Nobody can question that at this point. But those are quite the teams. The Dolphins, the Browns, the Jets, all in this century The Dolphins post Marino? The Browns post reinstatement? The Jets outside of a few lucky years? Why is it that she's ending up on some of the worst possible rosters for anybody to succeed, to be honest with you? The Jets, okay, they're in her hometown. I don't give a shit. They're not a very functional organization, especially with some of the stuff that has broken out about them over just the last few years. But, hey, if the Giants are willing to take a chance on her, then it is what it is. That conflict could be interesting. Because it's like you're actively serving on a team. And I mean, all it is announcing the picks. But I don't know. You get the feeling that role will shift around a little bit with her now taking that job. And I mean, with all due respect, get yours in that situation. Like you're more than entitled to take that job if you're so willing. So you can't crap on that at all. It's just like, that's a little interesting, to say the least. Oh, wow. With that kind of experience as well, it makes sense to pin her as a replacement. Previously, as these articles state, essentially, quote, it's a move that comes just weeks after it was announced that Senior Vice President of Football Operations and Strategy Kevin Abrams would be leaving the organization. That was the first big shakeup after Harbaugh, who was expected to reshape the organization after negotiating to report directly to ownership, end quote. The man in question, Abrams, was there for 27 years before said parting of mutual ways, if you will. Mutual parting of ways, pretty much. And now you get a person in Aponte who has over 30 plus years of general experience doing a multitude of different things in the same realm. It fits very well. And it puts another potentially more traditional voice in there to drown out that sort of friction and interference from the general manager spot. Speaking of Joe Schoen, those two have gotten to know each other pretty well over the years. As this quote from Sports Illustrated states, in 2010, she joined the Dolphins, where she again overlapped with Parcells, who was in his final season as the team's executive vice president of football operations. Aponte's role with Miami included managing the team's salary cap. Aponte, who also crossed paths with current Giants general manager Joe Schoen in Miami, was with the Dolphins through the 2016 season. End quote. So both of these guys were on the Dolphins at around the same time. That says quite of a lot right there. And I can't really speak as to how that relationship between those two was, even when they were there at that point of time. At this point, both of them are older, maybe a little wiser. So if there was any sort of tension between those two, you would hope that is resolved. Or maybe not. Because again, like anything that is done is now going to be reported specifically to John Mara and the family. Shane's not going to be the lead guy, and Aponte is going to be an individual who, again, understands exactly what she's talking about. Like, that will not be left up to doubt whatsoever. So that can also be tough to navigate from a general manager standpoint. But we will definitely see. I mean, yeah, Sports Illustrated essentially has a quote saying what I just said. Like, more than likely, you get a person in there for 27 years doing essentially the same thing, and you upgrade with a person who has a longer lasting experience of doing some of the same things, it's kind of hard to not pass up on that. And this just came out of the blue. Like, I can admit that I wouldn't have seen something like this happen, to be completely honest. But that's totally fine. It's totally fine. Okay. Let's see. All right. The Eagles would see Jeff Stoutland, one of their, I think, defensive coaching staff candidates, general members of that team. In that unit, he would retire from his post and step down, leave the Eagles organization, and move forward from there. He was with them for the past 11 to 13 years, if I'm not mistaken. So that's definitely, even when you look at how the Eagles have had so many other players get recognition over the years, even when they won their first Super Bowl in 2018, Stoutland's been around for all of it. And he was a well-respected individual in that locker room. He sent out a statement as well, just notifying everybody of his decision. And, while it might not get talked about that much, it is one that could, hurt from a, deeper within if you are an Eagles player at this point. And even with some Eagles fans, honestly, are just hearing his name for the first time. He's been around for that long, just doing all the work behind the scenes, even if he wasn't getting the kind of attention that you would expect. And quite frankly, as an assistant coach, it's kind of you're probably not going to see that kind of coverage, but that's fine. So you wish Stoutland all the best as he moves forward. And in terms of a backup plan, to this point, I don't know if the Eagles necessarily have one. So they'll definitely have to go to work there. The Rams and the 49ers will play against each other in Australia for the first ever game being played on that soil. And they will do so in Melbourne next season. Now, of course, in a previous recap, that was already teased beforehand, and I already talked about the idea of a game being played in Australia as they had originally reported. They never got down to who exactly would appear in those games. But of course, with a wave of different international news going around in terms of overseas games, they're about to have 8 or 9 next season across multiple countries and cities. So, the initiative there is still very much to include a wide audience, a wide audience from all across the world. Because at the end of the day, it is a product, and it is a product that has become international, not just in, looking at the overall viewership from the Super Bowl and things like that. Consider this as well. The Super Bowl halftime show got about 125 or so million viewers, making it the second most watched all time. So you hear about all those different things going down, and you hear about the general viewership of the game itself. And you factor in as well, looking at bandwidth, looking at broadband coverage and things like that. We have so many people tuning into this worldwide in their own different ways, with their own different sorts of gatherings across many different cultures. That's just not something that is really going to change for the NFL at this point of time. Once they started all of this up and got the reception for it that they did, you knew that this was just going to increase in, honestly, a multitude of elements. You can look at it from a profit standpoint, of course, that's going to matter a whole hell of a lot in the equation. But you also look at it from, again, involvement, media traffic with, some of the things that they do with the fans. The fan of the year, for example, different promos regarding, different teams who may be getting set to play. And then not to mention the love that they've constantly shown for this. The energy that they constantly bring. No matter what country they come to. They're coming out, they're showing up to watch some NFL action. And it's going to be so cool to see that continue to move forward in some different locations, like Madrid, like Melbourne, and also Rio de Janeiro. The NFL will be playing a game there as well, and they, with another report, noted that the Cowboys will appear in that game. Now, they don't know the specific opponent, but they will, at the very least, have the Cowboys on the opposing side. Of course, this isn't the NFL's first touch with Brazil overall. They played the Eagles-Packers game in the start of the 2024 season in Sao Paulo. So, you already have that kind of experience there. We're in completely different territory. We're talking about the big dog. We're talking about the former site of the 2016 Olympics, that Rio. So it should be electric down there. Now, again, there was a situation, in that Packers game where, honestly, you had to be as careful as possible if you were a fan wearing green due to the soccer culture around there and how hard different supporters ride for the teams in that region. Now, again, I can't assume anything, but would it surprise me if a similar thing were to come out before the Rio game? I'm not sure that I can say that I would be. It'd be something to watch out for sure. Like, you always have to be careful about those things. But, man, no matter what game you tune into, honestly, internationally, they have, over the past few years, the quality of some have just been atrocious, to say the least. Some have been such great misses by the NFL in terms of the teams that they've booked. And by getting the Rams and the 49ers in there, especially when those teams are at full health, that should be a pretty fucking good game. Fuck them both, but that should be a quality football game. In theory, the Cowboys are a brand that is now worth that much in terms of overall valuation. And they are also a team that, honestly, you see that star with white stripes around it and, a major amount of blue in the logo. Anytime you see that, anyone around the world is going to associate that with Dallas. Anybody. They might not have even been to the U.S. before, and they can still recognize that. Hilariously as it might be, because they haven't done shit in 30 years, they're still as recognizable of an NFL brand as any. And they're still good. We can shit on them. It's always a great day when they lose, of course. They're still a good enough organization to compete in a spot like this. And I'm sure that they will. It all just depends on who they face. And from there, we can start to get a little bit better of an idea of what's going to happen. Okay, though. All right. For some different news here, Sonny Jurgensen, the former Washington quarterback, would pass away at the age of 81. Unfortunately, as this quote from The AP via MSN states, a Washington Commanders spokesperson confirmed Friday that the team learned of Jurgensen's death that morning from his family, who said he died of natural causes in Naples, Florida, after a brief stay in hospice care. As that statement says, quote, we are enormously proud of his amazing life and accomplishments on the field, marked not only by a golden arm, but also a fearless spirit and intellect that earned him a place among the legends in Canton. He lived with deep appreciation for the teammates, colleagues, and friends he met along the way. While he has taken his final snap, his legacy will remain an indelible part of the city he loved and the family he built. End quote. Honestly, those facts are largely true to this point. Jurgensen, I should say, is still regarded as one of the better Washington quarterbacks of all time. Obviously, the team name was going to be different at the time of which he was playing. That's just a given. And I don't even need to go through all the overall numbers for him because his reputation is truly unflappable in the eyes of most Washington guys. You look at guys like him, you look at guys like Sammy Baugh, for instance. Like, those guys are going to forever be legends of that organization. So there is honestly nothing that can be done at this point in time, literally nothing, to change their minds. They have done so much, as the statement said, for them on the field, off the field, to where it's like, you're not going to replace that at all. And whenever, no matter what you may go through for the rest of your life, you can get yourself into a situation where an organization remembers you like that. You understood that you did something right. Now, again, it's unfortunate to see him pass away, but he, again, 91 years old, and to, have that happen of natural causes instead of other truly foul material, especially with some of the stuff that's coming up here. It's like, you have to give respect for that. And, there's solace to be taken in that as well. Of course, those family members of his want to be able to spend more time with him. It is simply not a call that can be made on their behalf. There was a different development that took place, obviously. But he went out on his own terms. It was not forced on him by the actions of somebody else. And I think that says a lot. Let me see. Yeah, as this quote from CBS News states, he topped 3,000 yards in the season 5 times, including twice with Philadelphia in an era before rules changes opened up NFL offenses. He was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1983 and remains the only Washington player to wear the number 9 jersey in a game, end quote, and deservedly so. To think as well that his impact for the organization goes so far as to have an effect on a man in Josh Harris who recently acquired ownership of the Commanders after taking over for that fucking... we don't even need to do that. But as Josh Harris said, quote, Sonny Jurgensen is and always will be one of the defining legends of Washington football. For me, Sonny was the embodiment of what it means to don the burgundy and gold, tough, smart, and endlessly devoted to this franchise and its fans, end quote. So, I mean, hey, man. And it's crazy, too, because the CBS News article also goes on to say that, again, outside of the playing career, he was also a commentator for the team for a little while. So even after that, having all that success with them on the field, and even with being, in a division rival for a little bit of time after that, he still decided to come back because he had that much love for the team and decided that, okay, in a similar way to John Madden, though maybe not on the same sort of level as a commentator, that's okay. It's not a competition. But he decided to be the voice, probably color commentary wise, for the Commanders in his post-playing career for some years. So it's like, hey, man, that is definitely cool, to say the least, man. You wish his family good spirits and condolences in this time, of course, as they try to move forward in this. But again, there is a lot to be proud of there. And, they said as much. So, again, as I would typically say, though, it's like, again, a lot of these guys were able to do it, and thank goodness that they did. Gotta give a person their flowers and their respects while they are here in real time. That's always the goal. That always should be the standard. Okay, the Rams, to pivot for a little while, they would hire Kliff Kingsbury as their new offensive coordinator, per Adam Schefter and Peter Schrager of ESPN. And that is very, 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 very interesting. Because it's like, to me, it even further signals what exactly the Rams would be thinking about in the next few years. Now, when I saw it initially, even without, getting initially into reporting on it or anything like that, or relaying that here and kind of expressing some thoughts on it, I thought it was a good hire initially, and I do still stand by that. But from a deeper standpoint, and from something that's probably understood, considering the man who is the starter, even with him saying at the NFL Honors after winning an NFL MVP, deservedly so, the first one of his career, Matthew Stafford did say that he was going to return for this season. So you've probably got a couple more good years out of Matthew Stafford. And again, I think that the offense isn't really going to tail off all that much. Now, again, you want Matthew Stafford to be in good health. That's going to be the biggest detriment for them. That is the core point of this. If Matthew Stafford is healthy, because again, there were moments in the offseason leading up to last year where you were questioning whether or not he was going to be able to stay out on the football field for extended periods of time. And thankfully, for the Rams, he was. And they had a tremendous season from that standpoint. If he's healthy, this offense is probably not going to miss too much of a beat to what they were able to do this year. It's Sean McVay primarily calling the plays, and LaFleur was there, obviously, as an assistant role in a passive manner. Kingsbury is going to be the same way, and he's got more experience as a true offensive coordinator. A lot more seasoned at this point of time. And you're pairing up that kind of expertise with him specifically in that role as an offensive coordinator where he's at his best alongside the mastermind in Sean McVay. That is a dangerous mix. The things that they are going to collectively be able to do with the weapons that they can still retain. Although it'd be interesting to see what happens with Davante Adams. He may try to stick it out for another season, but I can't guarantee that he'll stick around for the long haul with this team. I can't guarantee it. In long haul, I probably mean 3 years or greater. They may not have trouble with trying to regain his services this offseason, but only time will tell with that. The thing that makes this Kingsbury hire even better from their perspective is that, Matthew Stafford, as I said, he is probably on his last leg. And the entire conversation is shifted around the Rams needing to look for a quarterback within at least the next 2 years. And while McVay is going to have some say in that, I think that Kingsbury, especially in that role, especially being a former quarterback himself, and having that track record of general success with being able to get immediate production out of guys like Kyler Murray, like Jaden Daniels, in the event that the Rams do decide to bring in a rookie who can progress into a starter in at least the next few years, there are very few other offensive coordinators. There are very few other head coaches that I would trust with making that transition as smooth as possible than McVay and Kingsbury, respectively. So from that standpoint, with you losing a talent in LaFleur who was being pursued throughout the entire offseason, the second that job opened up, or the second that he made it clear he was looking for a head coaching job, them phone lines were fucking ringing. And inevitably, you were going to lose them. To get back a man in Kliff Kingsbury who can pull that off and put together solid offenses, even if you say that, again, last year's tailed off and even then it came down to injuries, Kingsbury mostly has a good track record at this thing. And in the event that it doesn't work, it's like, again, McVay is dominating the overall control here. So, it isn't really going to all be on Kingsbury if he, Kingsbury at least, how do I word this? He'll be the one that handles most of the fall, I would say. Because McVay, again, at this point, they said, he came out and said he was contemplating retirement. I'm like, whoa. Man is already one of the more accomplished head coaches in such a short time. He's still so young. And he was contemplating retirement? Oh, that would have been absolutely interesting, to say the least. But if they have similar success, and especially if they bring in a rookie, maybe, if Stafford is still there by that time, he sits down a year, learns the system under Stafford, and has Kingsbury in his ear as a former player who understands the game, he better be credited for some of that as well, I will say. Instead of, having the Commanders and shit saying, oh, we're firing Kingsbury. Bro, the report said that y'all were parting ways with each other and that he was exploring other ventures. Don't try to make that end like that. That's foul as shit. But I digress. Okay, let me see. Hold on. Okay. The NFL would have a pair of things happen. Firstly, they mentioned that there were going to be some more general updates to player safety rules to come. And again, when you look at the annual league meeting and how they damn near tried to abolish the fucking tush push, you can imagine that something like that is going to roll back around this year. However, the main focus of this update centers around replay assist. And I believe the conversation was, with some of the stuff that I was looking at, that they are trying to figure out different penalties and their reviewability with replay assist, even after the call on field may differ from that of what exactly is being challenged in a situation like that. And, some penalties were subjected to replay assist and changed in post, but they're talking about expanding the entire thing. I mean, they're talking about different holding penalties. They're very high on looking at pass interference penalties. So there's a lot going on with that. And, this is what some people have been clamoring for. So I can imagine that if they do incorporate those rules, it's like, it does change the game up a whole hell of a lot. I will say. They would also consider the changing of some rules. More specifically, the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now, before addressing that aspect of it, because I, for whatever reason, just did not end up covering that point completely. Although, again, with what I'd heard at that point, it's like I didn't want to beat a dead horse. Everybody understood exactly what was up here. But I'll say this shit right now. You motherfuckers in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, bro. Y'all niggas tripping, man. Y'all niggas tripping. It's crazy because, if they're going to constantly throw out the fact that Belichick at the time, and then Robert Kraft most recently, was also not inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame on first, as well. It was just, it's mind-blowing how two of the more successful contributors in NFL history, or at least Kraft is a contributor, Belichick is obviously a coach and was also a GM. Those two guys from one of the most forthcoming dynasties, I should say. Definitely at the face of the league for about 2 decades, those guys from that ball club do not reach the Hall of Fame. And Belichick doesn't on first ballot. What the fuck is wrong with you? Seriously, what is wrong with you? And you had a whole lot fall out from that. Obviously. Why every time I hear Bill Polian's name, it's followed up by some bullshit too. Every single fucking time. This nigga had the nerve to say that he did not remember who he voted for. In the Hall of Fame themselves, with something that they rarely do because they want to keep the entire process private in the first fucking place, they have to come out and confirm that Polian did in fact vote for Bill Belichick. But it wasn't just Polian running his mouth. You had other people as well, some of which were pressed by a different podcaster, and also Pablo Torre, the journalist, the sports journalist as well, about their voting ballot as well. And some did actually take the bait and come out and confirm what their vote was after talks with those guys, which again is rare because it is usually classified information. It's not visible. It's not viewable by the public eye. It just isn't. So all of that created quite the stir amongst the football landscape. And it's there's a lot to look through there. Because, obviously when you think about a Hall of Fame, you think about tradition. And to have that get cut and broken, shattered into 1,000 different pieces with just one fatal move of non-action is kind of tough. So they had a lot to think about. And as this quote from the NFL.com page states, quote, the Pro Football Hall of Fame will consider making changes to the voting panel and process of choosing Hall of Famers following a year when Bill Belichick's omission from the 2026 class generated outrage. Hall of Fame President Jim Porter said in an interview Thursday night after the 5-player class was announced that there are several possible tweaks that could be made, adding that those changes aren't specific to Belichick's perceived snub. End quote. One of those things, personally, and even with, some of the stuff being said here kind of correlating with it, they need to make these classes of players bigger. I get that you want to have exclusivity, and that's with any Hall of Fame, right? Look at the Basketball Hall of Fame. I do need to check out and see who they nominated for that. They better have some pretty good names in there. But you have that recently coming out. The MLB also announced a few Hall of Famers themselves. And that class was very short as well, with a lot of players being left out. You can't make this a complete and total participation trophy thing. You don't ever want to treat it that way. You want to induct the guys who are truly performing at the top of their game for an extended amount of years, or in guys that were recently inducted. Lee Kuechly had such a short career, among with some of the other linebackers who've been considered for the Hall of Fame. By comparison, his career is one of the shortest, but he had such a great impact for that Panthers team that he got voted in anyways. And it was about fucking time. And that's what it boils down to, right? And to say that it just isn't about that, I guess, from a PR perspective and from a logical standpoint as well, organizationally, it probably shouldn't just be limited to that. Because let's be honest, man. If you are going to do that to Belichick because of cheating, then you can't allow Ben Roethlisberger to get in on first ballot either, with some of the stuff that I've heard about he and other Steelers players going after Mike Tomlin. Because as Joey Porter Jr. said on that podcast, and as most people should have an understanding of, you already understood, no matter what the hell the verdict was in that particular case and potential others, you understand some of the questionable shit that Roethlisberger has been involved in off the field. Now, it is not a competition from that standpoint, but you compare cheating to what the fuck this nigga was accused of, and you think that somehow, some way, he's still going to be a first ballot guy with that shoddy-ass reputation. You can't do it. You've now established that something like that can be put in play. You cannot make that decision now. It just can't happen. And if it does, we contradict pretty much everything you stand for at this point of time. Which, again, could be a number of different things because you just don't know at this point. When I initially heard of that specifically, it reminded me of what the hell is going on with MLB. Now, again, the Hall of Fame class for them was short. But you look at them consistently rolling over guys like Alex Rodriguez, like Barry Bonds, like Pete Rose over years and years and years. And I even said as much in like a comment section. Somebody made the good point that it's like, okay, Pete Rose himself was a very capable player with an extremely questionable reputation. So you probably can't make that correlation there. But again, Bonds, the cheating was there. It's well documented. And with the MLB specifically, One of the first things, because I watched the Hall of Fame last year, one of the first things they open up with in the ceremony essentially harkens back to the integrity of the game, maintaining the integrity of the game. And it just creates for another one of these interesting battles here. Because, yes, that's a fair point to have. You don't want to allow anybody to get in and be rewarded for violating those terms at all and circumventing different strategies to try to get an easier shortcut on their way to individual success and maybe team success. You don't want to reward that. At the same time, Bonds was not using those things for the entirety of his career. He just wasn't. Now, of course, especially in the prime of his career, pairing that shit up with steroids and things like that just made this man jack up those numbers even further. But the man was a consistent producer on the baseball field before and after that, even into his early 40s. Same thing with Belichick. You look at those couple incidents, and yes, they were major scandals at their respective times. The man still produced at a high level on the football field for years and years and years before and after that. And that caliber of production may just be too undeniable, even if you can't possibly overlook those scandals. That overall production, those championships, those amount of wins are just too much to be ignored. Now, again, going back to some of the transparency things and things like that, as this quote from NFL.com also states, voter Vay Gregorian of the Kansas City Star wrote a column explaining his reasoning for choosing seniors players Ken Anderson, Roger Craig, and L.C. Greenwood instead of Belichick, even though he believed Belichick shouldn't have had to wait for induction. In the end, though, I felt more compelled by what I perceived to be last chances and looming lost causes within the system as we have it, a system I hope the Hall will see fit to change now. End quote. I mean, respect to Roger Craig. He's been waiting for such a long time. And, he was truly emotional about getting in there. Think about that. The Super Bowl is in San Francisco. The NFL Honors is in San Francisco. He stands on that stage. With that caliber of recognition now, he gets to appear in the stadium where he made his Hall of Fame playing career on in the first place. And he gets a chance to go out there with that kind of recognition. That is a special moment, and it's not something that you can take away from him. But at the same time, Gregorian, even if you want to have that mindset, you are inevitably pushing back other players as well. Literally. At several points, they have mentioned coaches like George Seifert and Mike Holmgren, who are also names that consistently get thrown around as Hall of Fame caliber. By making those decisions, those guys have to be backed up as well because the pool's so short, and that is one of the things that they are looking at changing when it comes to separating coaches and contributors from other seniors players. Because the pool's so short, you have now backed yourself into a situation where you have to vote in Belichick the next year. You have no choice. And then you have to just pick one. Between Seifert, between Holmgren. I think even Mike Shanahan was still in the running for this as well. One of those guys are going to have to wait again. So that's not really good logic here. And the Gregorian vote, having him come out and explain that also, again, just went against what the Hall of Fame traditionally does. So it's like, yeah, we've got to figure that out. As the CBS Sports article states, quote, the controversy has renewed criticism of rule changes implemented last year that combined senior players, those retired at least 25 years, with coaches and contributors into a single ballot. Under the format, voters select 3 of the 5 finalists with only the top vote getter and anyone exceeding the 80% threshold earning induction. Craig was the lone candidate to clear that bar this year. End quote. Now, I think MLB does a similar thing. Like, they have a different pool for players who are out of the 10-year threshold to be confirmed for a Hall of Fame induction. Those guys are then placed into different eras selection and combined, because that's all under the Baseball Writers Association of America. They handle that specific component with those eras. And you have a few players from there on a year-to-year basis. Now, again, the pool's convoluted there as well. They combine it, try to clump it all into one, and maybe consider a couple a year to get in the Hall of Fame via that category as well. But it's just again, by doing all of that, it's just at its face, you are trying to stack up on the field production against coaching production, against production from contributors. And it is that is just hard to do. Why exactly? Because again, the criteria is going to be different as it is. What is the purpose of doing it in that manner? Why? You have to level out the playing field. Even if you are going to keep those kinds of things a little bit shorter, they need to be able to, at the very least, say that they stack up against their genuine peers in their respective fields. It doesn't make sense that a weaker player with, different lower end numbers on the football field compared to other Hall of Fame candidates, there's no reason why that guy should be stacked up against a contributor who is one of the greatest to ever do it. It just doesn't make sense when you look at it from that standpoint. It doesn't. So that is also something that's going to have to shift. You can't blame Bill Belichick as well, with different articles stating different things coming out, stating that he essentially felt disappointed by the news and was shocked. And can you blame his ass? To be that consistent for a 2-decade time span and have a group of suits wearing ties tell your ass that you are not a first ballot Hall of Famer is fucking crazy. It's insane. And genuinely, again, because by all accounts, this player was more involved in those scandals than Belichick was, especially Deflategate. You really gonna sit here and tell me that Tom Brady isn't a first ballot Hall of Famer, even with those cheating scandals in mind? Because you've now set that stage. If Kraft can't get in, if Belichick can't get in, you can't turn right around now and say that Brady should get in on the first ballot by that logic because he cheated. But at the same time, you are going to get even more smoke from the general NFL consensus if y'all come out next year and y'all say that Tom Brady ain't a first ballot Hall of Famer. You have different players, current and former, past, grilling their asses for that decision to leave Belichick out. You can amplify that shit times 100 if Brady doesn't get in on the first ballot. Again, you don't want to reward that shit. But the man is literally regarded at the same time as the best fucking quarterback to ever do it. As one of the best players to ever do it. In some people's eyes, he is the GOAT. And you are going to potentially leave him out on the first ballot because of 2 scandals and overlook all of the on-the-field production that he had. It's like, come on, dude, please. That's crazy. That's crazy, man. Seriously. So they've got a lot to do there between, potentially shortening the pool, changing around some language, and also, do they open it up to the public? Do they try their hardest to keep everything private once again? I don't know. They also said, as the CBS Sports article also states, quote, let me see. Or wait, no, I think it was the NFL.com article. Let me go back here. As this states, Porter said that the Hall plans to return to in-person voting and discussion for the 50-member committee after moving to a virtual meeting room following the COVID pandemic. He also said the vote will likely happen closer to the annual reveal in NFL honors to reduce the chances of leaks, and said the Hall would consider releasing vote totals in individual ballots in the future, but won't do it for this year's class. End quote. Now, I suppose that first component of things makes sense. Even as we have, after the pandemic, returned to some form of normalcy at the same time, like in specific areas of the country, of the world, of some states, you can't convince them to ever revert back to the way things once were in general life before the pandemic. Like, everything at that time was just so chaotic to where it's like, okay, yeah, for the standpoint of just knowing that we are safe and secure from whatever the hell is going on, okay, we're just going to keep everything contained. We're going to still promote some form of distancing. We're going to, opt for more virtual experiences and things like that. Hence, when you look around and you see some of the other stuff between, virtual reality and things like that, blowing up over that time. That's exactly why, right? This is no different. But in-person voting can help, Now, again, this is probably still going to be closed off to the public, but, hey, now we're going to truly see in real time who exactly you are pulling for. And I'm not saying, again, you naturally have people kind of evaluating the entire thing by themselves. And I'm talking about each and every single voter. Like, okay, if you're going to vote for so-and-so, all right, tell me why. Let's review this together. Let's talk about this a little bit. Let's entertain this for a second. I want to hear your side of things. Maybe tell you how delusional you are as well. And I'm going to try to counter you. I may agree with you, but we've got to have that open forum for discussion, or otherwise you just aren't going to get anywhere, truly. And to have it happen closer to the reveal at the NFL honors, yeah, the finalists typically come out beforehand. I feel like in the same way, they may have to narrow them down too. Now again, it's understood that honestly, once you get a look at the finalists, especially with the way the class has been, as short as it has been over the past couple of years, ain't gonna lie, with some of the names that may stick out to a few people, you can almost tell that those are the guys that they will select. But again, if you do move the voting process closer to it and after the finalists come out and are revealed, then, there is an opportunity where leaks could be reduced. That could be pretty good, to be honest. That could be something you could work with. But, I guess it's just a matter of how close. It is really just a matter of how close. Like, you had all 5 Hall of Famers for this year be greeted with the knock, as it's affectionately named, where you have a current member of the Hall of Fame passing the proverbial torch over and informing them that they have been selected. And with that, you get some pretty cool moments. You had Larry Fitzgerald, Minnesota kid, grew up as a ball boy for Randy Moss, get alerted by the man himself that he was entering the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's pretty special stuff. Former 49ers teammates greeted Roger Craig with the same thing. In fact, he ran up to the door. He was excited as hell. And you can't blame the man. Those are moments that you cannot truly take away from an individual in that situation. Luke Kuechly was greeted in by, I believe, Julius Peppers. Former team. Like, it goes deep, man. So, like, there's just a lot of sentiments that come with that. And also general preparation after that moment. Like, they've got to make sure at that time that you are ready to go for the event. And logistically speaking, depending on just how close they call this thing, I don't know if that may end up working. So that could also be something that, hey, they are their own independent body, so they'll probably be able to decide this themselves. But I also wouldn't be surprised if they bring this up a little bit, even amongst the owners in the annual league meeting as well. Maybe not, to vote on anything specific that needs to be changed, but as just a general form of discussion. Like, hey, did y'all see what happened in this offseason? Let's chat about this for a quick second. Like, that is, honestly, it's something that's so fucking major that you are not avoiding having that conversation. No matter what NFL circle you fall in, you're just not avoiding it. So I'm sure it'll get brought up at several points in this. And I guess from there, we'll figure out what happened. Jim Schwartz, after Todd Monken was hired, was in limbo, to be honest with you. I think that, personally, he was expecting to be elevated as a head coach in the system. And multiple people all over the place were clamoring for that as well. He'd been with that system for so damn long. He'd been with that team for so long. And that defense under him is a machine year in, year out. Why would you not have a trusted man handling the entire roster at that time with how well liked he is? But after another year of getting passed up, he said, I'm strongly considering just doing my own thing and resigning from the team. And lo and behold, per Adam Schefter, Jim Schwartz would announce his resignation from the defensive coordinator position for the Browns. Tough, bro. Tough. Now, the Browns defense still has enough pieces on their roster to perform at an exceptionally high level. But again, Schwartz had them being that consistently dominant for that many years in a row. And in a league that is constantly, bringing about change and different head coach and coordinator roles on a season-to-season basis. For that man, Schwartz, to be around for as much time as he did, or as much time as he was, I should say, is like, come on, bro. That is just something that doesn't always happen anymore. At least it's not a guarantee. And the fact that he was able to do it shows you quite a lot about who he is as a general coordinator, as a figure in that locker room. Yet you still decided to go elsewhere with your decision. At that point, you just don't deserve to have him anymore. It'd be very interesting to see where he moves on to, though. Maybe as a coordinator still at this point, because with like the production speaks for itself when it comes to the man. Looking at the Browns over the past few seasons, it's like he'd been in the NFL since 2001 in this space. And in his tenure with the Browns at this point, for the past 3 seasons, he has put together a defense that is consistently ranked in the top 5. Now, 2024 might have been a little bit of an anomaly, but overall, they were first in yards and fourth in yards in 2023 and 2025, respectively. They made sure that you were not pushing the ball down the field at all, and even though their offense would be trash in a similar way to the Steelers, they understood that if they could lean on their strong defensive play, they had a shot somehow in every single game they appeared in. And it made them a playoff team in 2023, not so much in 2025 because of dysfunction at the quarterback position, which again, Schwartz has no control over. You can't blame that on him. All of that shit, all of this shit, you did not have to lose Jim Schwartz, but once again, you found yourself in a spot where you had virtually no other choice but to try to put a Band-Aid on the initial problem you carved out for yourself. All stemming back to giving Deshaun Watson a deal that he could not refuse and then having him just suck on this football team. That's all that this boils down to right now. And it's incredibly unfortunate that it had to be that way. It didn't have to be that way at all. Craziness, man. Okay. The Jets will hire Seth Ryan as a passing game coordinator. Keeping it in the family. I believe that I saw the initial post from Adam Schefter. It was essentially Rex Ryan, of course, and also Rom Ryan, if I'm not mistaken. I can check that to make sure. Buddy Ryan. It's one of the two. You have like the Ryan family in football terms. Like you have such a laundry list of overall contribution. Yes, it should be Buddy Ryan, I think. Like there's just, it's a lot, man. So you have to give respect to Seth in this situation, for being able to find himself, as a part of his team. Yeah, it was Buddy Ryan as a defensive line coach for this team all the way back in 1968. Think about that. Now, again, the Jets are still searching for their first Super Bowl since that time. It's been that long. When you're telling me that Buddy Ryan, Rex Ryan's father at that point, was serving on the team, the last team that got it done. You get Rex Ryan there all these years later after his tenure in Baltimore as a defensive coordinator, right? And then Seth Ryan, presumably one of their fucking children, would technically be Buddy Ryan's grandchild, one of his grandchildren, is now on this team in 2026. We'll see how he performs. But it's like, man, yet another reminder in a way of very brief glory days for this organization in a moment where they are nowhere near that right now, to say the least. All right, now to pivot into something incredibly dark. It is probably worth me saying this right here, right now. There is definitely a trigger warning for this. If you are uncomfortable hearing about very sensitive material, you probably should not stay on this video. I promise you. With what the hell I'm about to get into, especially in this particular incident, I don't believe that you are going to want to. If you do happen to stay on this video and hear out all of this, be warned, like right now. Yeah, because this shit is just like, oh my gosh, dude. Okay, so Darron Lee, like, I guess, okay, they're saying that this is technically a week ago. Pretty much a little bit before the Super Bowl takes place at this point, we get a report involving him. And essentially, as this ESPN article states, it's not pretty. Quote, former NFL linebacker Darron Lee, the New York Jets' first-round pick in 2016, was arrested and charged with first-degree murder in the death of his girlfriend, the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office announced Friday. Lee, 31, a standout at Ohio State, was identified as the suspect and taken into custody Thursday at the scene, according to the Sheriff's Office. End quote. Now again, football in that situation is the last thing, the very last thing that matters. So while I can say a lot about that, my reality would be that I have not heard of the name Darron Lee in years. My only experience with watching him or hearing about him has been through his football play on the field at Ohio State, in New York, with Buffalo for a time, weirdly enough. This is the first thing I've heard about him in years, and I was shocked as hell when I heard it initially. I'm like, whoa, what the fuck is going on here? What is truly happening? Between all of the randomness that I've gotten into over the past few recap videos in terms of developments, with some of the circumstances surrounding this thing, or different things. And now you get into a situation where a former player is believed to have done this to his girlfriend. Like, it's just incredibly dark stuff to hear about. As the USA Today article did note as well, to just put it out there, it is now February 13th. His court date was on February 11th. So, after this, I can continue to look into this even further and see what exactly happened there. It's like, dude, bruh, come on. They state, though, with some of the circumstances, quote, according to the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office, deputies responded to a residence in Ottawa, Tennessee to a report of CPR in progress. Upon arrival, first responders located the female victim and attempted life-saving measures, the police statement said. The victim was pronounced deceased at the scene. End quote. Now again, with everything that I have up from all of these articles, more information is needed, and more information could likely come out of the court case in regards to this situation. So I don't even want to play around with speculating any fucking thing in terms of what exactly might have led up to the woman in question being laid out on the ground like that. Maybe not even in that manner, but being in that state on the ground in the first place. Anything that led up to that, any amount of incidents that might have taken place between the two, if this was deemed to be a sort of toxic relationship. We don't have any intel on that whatsoever. So I can't speculate into that. But what I can say is that the clearest thing made known to the public right now is that this isn't even the first time that Darron Lee has been involved in something like this. As the quote from the CBS Sports article states, quote, Lee was arrested in 2023 for assault and domestic violence. According to the arrest report, Lee pushed a woman against the wall, throwing her to the floor and striking her face and head 8 to 9 times with his closed fists. End quote. I don't care what the hell you think of him or, have in regards to him as a football player at that point. That kind of shit cannot fucking fly. You are literally, and that is what the court is going to say when this comes into consideration. It is what you hear every single time with any case involving a kind of player in this regard. In a different context, different measure, but similar kind of assault. What the fuck did Indianapolis courts say the second that Mark Sanchez got involved in that case and it got taken to court? And I'll have to look back into that as well, unless they've continued to play around with the trial date or the start trial date for that one for the 40th fucking time. They made it a mission. They made it their intent to prove that Sanchez, that no NFL player in these kinds of situations, if you are going to not only cause harm to others in that way, but threaten and potentially take life, that you are not above the fucking law. And that shit from Darron Lee, if this is confirmed to be true, we don't even have the measure of saying allegations here. He was arrested for that shit flat out. He was arrested for this assault in 2023 against potentially a different woman. I would hope that this wasn't the same woman. But again, we have no information about that. I can't speculate that. That is proven to be true. And this is the type of man that you are dealing with. A person who would do that. So again, we don't know whether he's going to be proven innocent or guilty for these things. But in terms of looking at it from a character standpoint, there's your fucking proof right there. That the man clearly has got something going on to where he's been in this situation before. And so, unfortunately, this isn't something that you could put past him so easily. It's just not. So again, more information could potentially come out of this, with this court date in mind. And I would have to see it. Potentially even if we continue to follow this up. More of the details here could get even more graphic than that of what I just said. And that's the scary part here. Like, I don't know what exactly the end result is going to be. The only thing that we can say with full conviction right now is that think about the family of his particular girlfriend and what must be running through their minds as we speak. Because same thing in a different scenario with what I reported on relating to Kevin Williams. To have something like that happen to one of your family members and not have clarity on anything whatsoever, your mind is swirling all over the place with confusion, with paranoia, you fucking name it. That is unsettling to you. And until we get answers, they are going to be in that constant state of flux at that point. That's the only thing I can say with a guarantee right now. But it does not look great at all. Before I have to get right back into some other incredibly crazy shit, there is a brief pivot here pertaining to the Cowboys in what they may or may not be doing in the offseason. As multiple sources have cited or stated, Schefter originally stated that the Cowboys were expected to give George Pickens a franchise tag worth $28 million. And then I believe NFL Network's Mike Garafolo also came out and said that there is a potential for the Cowboys to trade him after tagging him as well. Now, of course, Pickens' agent, David Mulugeta, is the same one that Jerry Jones couldn't stand last offseason. He didn't want to talk to his agent. He wanted to talk to Michael. Well, you've got to play ball with him again, buddy. But a franchise tag would suggest that, probably not. We're going to try to hold this thing off for as long as we can. Why? It'd be one thing if George Pickens honestly came to this team on essentially a prove-it deal and put up some lackluster numbers, dealt with injury issues and things of that nature. And granted, that would be fair. You also do have to consider the fact that the maturity issues are still very much a thing for him. Look at some of the individual games that he had and the lack of effort that he showed on the football field. The lack of pursuit on a few plays. The lack of intent on his route running at times. It did stick out in those games. And, if you are willing to re-sign him, you don't want to have those things consistently flaring up. That could be an understandable point either. But consider what the hell George Pickens did last year. In a prove-it deal, mind you, the man burst right onto the scene, flanked CeeDee Lamb so damn well, and went off for a career-high season all across the board. 93 receptions, 1,429 yards, and 9 touchdowns en route to a Pro Bowl selection and an All-Pro second-team nod. The man elevated himself, even with maturity issues in question, from a receiver who may be a little underutilized in the offense and volatile to one of the more reliable threats in the league, especially from a numbers standpoint. Now again, in terms of effort, that could be questionable. But the production is out there, right out there for you. And you understood coming into the season that more than likely, you were not getting that kind of contribution from your previous number 2 wide receiver last season. Or any other guy Whether you look at it being Brandon Cooks, you look at it being Jalen Tolbert, you were not getting that caliber of play from either one of those guys. And I don't care if you want to keep him on for cheap. I don't care if Ryan Flanoy, did have some games where he was outplaying, out-efforting George Pickens. The man is still nowhere near his level of play on the field. You understood that this was going to be a boomer bust pickup. And Pickens came right in and shattered expectations. Why the fuck? Why the fuck would you risk losing him? And you're wasting money by putting him on your books. Even if it is for a season. You're just throwing fucking money around. If you're going to give him money, you best keep him. Why the fuck are you trading the nigga? Unless he comes out and says after a tag that he wants to be traded. That's the only excuse you have. If he comes out and says that, fine. If he doesn't come out and says that he wants to be traded after the tag, why the fuck would you do that to yourself? By having that massive cap hit on your books next season. To just not have the player produce for your fucking team and go somewhere else and potentially star out once again. That makes no sense. All because Jerry Jones don't want to deal with David Mulligetta. Look here, bro. Cough up that money. Pay George Pickens. If you think that he's worth about $33 million a year or so, pay him the fucking money. It is expensive. It is very expensive. Paying 2 wide receivers over $30 million a year. I understand that. But at the same damn time, the production warrants it. It warrants it. You don't have an expensive amount of talent behind those 2 guys. And Jake Ferguson, I suppose, with him having a career year season as well. Get it done. Stop playing fucking games, man. Get it fucking done. All right, moving from that, pivoting back into just, I honestly don't know how to, I'm just going to preface it by saying this. Because I'm watching the NFL Honors, okay? And they get to Defensive Rookie of the Year candidates. Amon is one. Schwartz was one and did end up winning Defensive Rookie of the Year, and I didn't have a problem with that, to be honest with you. Xavier Watts was up there, and also Abdul Carter was up there for some reason. I guess he had a stronger finish to this regular season. I don't know how he ended up there, but fine. Then you get to James Pearce Jr. With the season that he had, and honestly, I was saying as such, with the way that he had been playing in a few of the games that I'd been covering at the time, definitely asserted himself as one of the better rookie pass rushers in the NFL. And for a team that had been struggling to generate a pass rush for pretty much the last 8 seasons, finished with one of the worst overall totals in that time span. In fact, the single worst total in that time span. To have him and also Jalen Walker flanking him on the other side come together and spark a new life in that pass rushing core, it paid off a ton. To go off for 10.5 sacks at that time and be considered as a focal point of that defense so early. Especially for a man in Pearce Jr. who slid down for a number of different reasons in the draft, despite having, good tape, decent tape on film, and good combine metrics and everything like that. Is that a lot? However, even after that, you get his mother going on the stage, saying the most redeeming things about her son. And of course, she ain't gonna lie on him. She gonna make sure that he's represented in the most she's going to make sure that he's represented right. Okay? You're not gonna be playing on my child's name from her standpoint. Even with all that stuff in mind, that's my son. So I'm going to do right by my son. And I'm going to focus in on all of the good qualities that make him who he is as a person. To me, fair enough, fair play. But to have her go up there, say that in a moment where they were generally doing this for all the rookies, having their loved ones or close ones, say a few good things about them on stage. Hers, unfortunately, through no fault of her own, would age poorly. Because of news that would happen on the Saturday, the fucking Saturday after the NFL honors and before the Super Bowl. Why? Well, according to multiple sources and to just get this from ESPN, quote, Atlanta Falcons rookie edge rusher linebacker James Pearce Jr. was arrested Saturday in Florida after an alleged domestic dispute involving Los Angeles Sparks forward Rickea Jackson, police said. Pearce Jr. was arrested in Miami-Dade County on 2 counts of aggravated battery with a deadly weapon and a count of aggravated stalking. He was also charged with fleeing and eluding police officers, aggravated battery of a law enforcement officer, and resisting an officer without violence to his person. End quote. In one fell swoop, allegedly, he might have just changed the entire course of his life. Fuck a football career in this situation. And over ridiculousness. For those who don't understand, yes, Rickea Jackson is a recently drafted WNBA player. Honestly, one of the better ones the Sparks have to offer. I'm watching a microphone video. I don't know if I can use the word superstar just yet. But she's burgeoning. She's just getting started in this thing. Alongside Cameron Brink and those people on that team. Apparently, unbeknownst to me, they had been dating each other. They both attended Tennessee, the University of Tennessee, at around the exact same time. And at some point, they started a relationship with each other. Clearly, things were not going a certain way, and it was decided by one, with, everything that comes out once I find the quote here. And let's just say that, the opposing party didn't necessarily take a liking to those news. Okay. Yeah, let's just go through this entire string of quotes to just put this all into perspective. And I can also tie it back to the latter half of the other quote from ESPN to just give a full scale to this. So, quote, the incident occurred shortly after Pearce Jr. and Jackson ended their relationship, the latter said to police. Pearce repeatedly contacted Jackson up to Saturday's incident despite her blocking his phone number and requesting that he leave her alone. Authorities booked Pearce Jr. into Turner Guilford Night Correctional Center in Miami-Dade County. He posted a $20,500 bond and was released Sunday night with a pretrial condition stay-away order pertaining to Jackson. Jackson told police that Pearce Jr. followed her in her vehicle in a white Lamborghini SUV. According to the criminal complaint, when she stopped at a red light, Pearce Jr. exited his SUV and attempted to open Jackson's driver's side door. Jackson drove off and toward the Doral Police Department, and Pearce Jr. continued to follow her, at one point colliding with the rear end of her vehicle. Pearce Jr. then cut Jackson off at an intersection near the police station and collided with her vehicle head-on when she attempted to get away. Now again, keep in mind that all of these are allegations. So again, until they're proven, you cannot take them as fact necessarily. But you are sitting here and telling me that you not only put your life on the line, you put the life of your former girlfriend and a WNBA player on the line because she wasn't picking up your fucking phone calls or because she wasn't answering your texts. It's one of the stupidest ways that any person in any situation could go out. It's fucking dumb. It's dumb. It gets no simpler than that for me. You're trying to throw your whole life away, trying to resuscitate something that's already been called off. Jackson already ended the fucking relationship. What the fuck are you still doing in this situation? To do that several times, and then you try to physically confront her, allegedly, because of that. It's borderline insane shit. What the fuck do you mean you tried to get out of your fucking car and open up her door? What makes you think she wasn't going to drive away in that situation? Allegedly. The fuck you look like trying to walk up to her car and open it up rather forcefully, most likely. Oh, I just want to talk. Nigga, bro, come on, bro. Come on, dude. No. Just no. Then it gets crazier because, again, at that point, she's doing the best that she can. She has no intent of trying to deal with this whatsoever. She's just trying to handle her own business. She was not expecting to get involved in this shit. Can't blame her for driving to the police station. But then again, you level up the fucking craziness and you collide with her fucking car near the police station, near oncoming police in that moment. What the fuck did you think was going to happen next? What did you think was going to happen next, mate? Like, I don't understand the things that people do sometimes. On top of speeding, as this report states via Local 10 news, I think this is Florida-based. Like, come on. Just come on, bro. There's no way. Again, I can't necessarily speak on it without having been in this sort of relationship. But my nigga, there have got to be better ways to handle some shit than this. There has to be. Because, again, if all this is true, this is just unacceptable behavior, and then he had to double and triple down on it. Because it gets worse. You can't think it gets worse. It gets worse. Just, let me see. Man, Like, craziness, bro. Yeah, as this quote from CBS Sports also states, all right? Quote, when police arrived on the scene, an officer pulled a gun on Pearce and ordered him to get on the ground. Pearce Jr., who was standing outside his SUV, re-entered the vehicle and closed the door. The officer opened the door, but Pearce closed it, locked it, and fled the scene. While driving away, Pearce Jr. struck an officer in the left knee with his SUV. Police said that Pearce Jr. later crashed at Northwest 103rd Avenue and 66th Street. He exited the SUV, fled the scene on foot, and resisted arrest when police caught up to him and placed him in handcuffs. End quote. Now, I did see, before even getting into really, overlooking anything, they did put a quote out there on a post from one of the police officers in question, essentially stating that Pearce Jr. was lucky to be alive. Now, I can't speculate as to how many different people interpreted that quote. I can't speculate to that at all. It can definitely sound wild, very wild, in a different context. But in this case, you're telling me that Pearce Jr., because it's not like, again, it has to escalate in that situation. The only reason that is out is just to enforce the surrender. That is it. You don't have them engaging with you in such a way at this moment. So it's not that situation at all. Like, you're actively making this scene out here as it is right now. So they are entitled to go through that traditional protocol. But not only do you not listen to that, you also have a situation where, as they're trying to, surround you, I guess, you flee the scene. You never do that. And then you hit an officer in the knee. Like, brother, you can't, good and goddamn well, you just can't do that. And this is in the course of them trying to make arrests. So you're resisting it, and you assault, well, not assault, that's strong, but you cause bodily harm to an officer in that way as well while doing this. Then as they're still trying to arrest them, even after that goes down, he's trying to throw 7 different people off of him. And it's like, bro, come on. That is way too fucking much. That's way too much. It's like, come on, man. Now, as this situation goes on, it's going to continue to need updates. Most recently, as I saw, Jackson, even with her own things going on at this time, we're not as close to the WNBA season just yet, right? But naturally, she's trying to do off-season work herself, trying to get prepared for that. And, as all this is going down, she has to look over her shoulder just because this individual in Pearce Jr. is still trying to lurk around for some reason. You can't possibly imagine being in a situation like that. Just trying to go about your own life in your own way and having to worry about some shit like that at every single fucking turn. It's ridiculous. They ordered Pearce Jr. at this point of time, per one of these articles, to, stay away from Rickea Jackson in this situation. But of course, telling it and actually enforcing a restraining order even then may still not do all that much, unfortunately. So now it's a matter of safety for Jackson in this situation, especially if all these allegations are true. At the very least, though, she is willing to take on some aspect of this. It was recently reported that she will testify in the court case involving Pearce Jr. in this situation. So, that could help a lot. And again, if this stuff is true, that's commendable. It takes a lot. A lot. No matter what side you fall on, it takes a lot to have to go up there, have to confront a potential individual like that and try to come up with all the different facts and memories that would be needed. Like, it's always going to be that matter for Jackson, and whether it is deservedly so or not, we'll see. But Pearce Jr. is in hot water. Take it back to the charges that were mentioned via this ESPN quote. All of them. All of them. In Florida law, all of them are very long in terms of punishment. All of them. Every single one. Some of them last as long as 15 to 20 years each. And you got yourself doing this out here as a recently turned 22-year-old. It's heartbreaking. Especially if he is sentenced in this regard. But it's like this stuff cannot be allowed. It can't be. It has there's no place for that. So something's got to be done. That will be determined at a later point, but something has to give, because it's ridiculous. Between this shit and the Darron Lee shit, it's like, yo, what the fuck? Like, come on, man. Ridiculousness, man. All right. Let me see. To pivot off of that and into some incredibly unfortunate news here. Barry Wilburn, another former Washington player, passed away at the age of 62. As this quote states right here, CBS affiliate WREG in Memphis, Tennessee, citing the Memphis Fire Department, reported that Wilburn was the victim of a house fire early Friday. The family confirmed the circumstances to Action News 5. End quote. Because again, you heard of his initial passing, but I'm seeing that. I'm like, damn. Now again, I don't know what exactly was up. Like, it is interesting. There are a number of things that could have been ailing Wilburn at this point. You hope not. Like, was he trapped in there? Was he unable to move? Was there a sort of breathing thing that was going on with him that limited that as this continued to flame up? Like, what exactly went down? I'm not sure, but it is, to have that happen to him is just terrible. Truly. Yeah, as this quote says right here, Memphis Fire Department crews were called to a house fire early Friday morning, and once the flames were extinguished, they located Wilburn, who was pronounced dead at the scene, WREG reported. The cause of the fire is still under investigation, the station reported. So I was like, damn. Damn. This is an individual who's had a fairly lasting impact on many different people. In fact, one of his former teammates, Tim Thompson, has some quotes here in the CBS News article, and essentially he was saying he looked up to him, essentially treated him as if he was a role model. And, while he was still at this particular high school that he also went to, Thompson decided to wear Wilburn's number just out of respect. And obviously, it goes much further than that with stuff that probably isn't expressed in these articles with Thompson as well. But to have that kind of impact on people, regardless of what it is that you may be doing, is always going to go a long way. So, to lose that, and to lose that in this fashion, I know it certainly hurts for a lot of people involved. It's definitely going to be a very difficult grieving process for those individuals and, other friends, potentially, family members, potentially. It's truly unfortunate, man. To briefly pivot from that, the Raiders would hire Klint Kubiak officially after the end of the Super Bowl and sign him to a 5-year deal. He's already said that he's excited to work with Tom Brady. And you know what? Tom Brady's excited to work with you too. It was the best move they could have had. It was exactly what they were looking for. And I can't blame them. You're going to have a new quarterback in that system. People say it's likely going to be Fernando Mendoza, drafted at the number 1 overall spot. So you're going to have a new face of that offense. And Kubiak has got some solid pieces to work with. Brock Bowers is going to level up even more potentially. You also as well have Ashton Genty to work with as well. The way that Kenneth Walker III is utilized, especially in the postseason, is probably something that they would model after. With Genty, it's probably going to be a more physical, probably more physical, I should say. That's fair to say. Run of the football, and he'll predominantly be running the football. But we did see at times, he was able to be utilized out in space as well and have some pretty monster games receiving. I could definitely expect that with Kubiak as well, being a better play caller. And honestly, this is going to be random. As an overall head coach, he'll be able to do well, generally speaking. The main thing for them is seeing if they can convince Max Crosby that they're actually trying to win football games. But outside of that, on the offensive end, to keep that short, I'd be interested in how he utilizes Dante Thornton Jr. Because when Torrey Horton was active, was playing for the Seahawks, he was a player as well who wasn't necessarily the greatest route runner in the world, but his speed was something that could take the top off of defenses. And even in, shorter usage, he got himself 5 receiving touchdowns on the season before going down with injury. Even when Shaheed came in, and granted, you could, talk about those guys interchangeably, some of the similar things were happening here. Thornton Jr., at the very least, needs to polish out his game a little more to become a more well-rounded wide receiver, but you should definitely be utilizing that size and that speed to your advantage if you can. And I think that Kubiak is going to try to involve him a little bit more. It's going to take a lot, but I think he can get that done, to be honest with you. Oh, okay. Man, I'm going to cover this lightly. Now, it's a serious situation, but I'm like, even with reading all this and seeing some of what I saw, I still don't know about this. Apparently, Keion White, the defensive lineman picked up at the trade deadline by the 49ers, was at a Super Bowl 60 party in San Francisco, and allegedly, per some posts that I just randomly saw, there was an incident between him, maybe his team, and Lil Baby. Yeah. Apparently, one thing led to another. And somebody shot him in the ankle. Again, thankfully, as multiple reports state, wasn't life-threatening. So that's good, but it's like, I just want more clarity here. Like, what exactly do we know exactly what was said? They're going to have to figure out who exactly let that off, of course. It's just so, strange. It truly is. And then, for another piece of news here, some more untimely sequences. As the USA Today states, quote, former Detroit Lions defender Tracy Scroggins has died at the age of 56. His family announced February 9th. Per a statement from his family, it is with profound sadness that we announce the passing of our beloved Tracy Scroggins. Tracy was a devoted father, cherished family member, and loyal friend whose life was marked by remarkable strength and perseverance. While many knew him for his career as a professional football player in the NFL, those closest to him knew him as a kind-hearted and generous man who cared deeply for his family and friends. The family also said in its announcement of Scroggins' death that the 56-year-old had suffered symptoms suspected to be from chronic traumatic encephalopathy during his post-playing career. End quote. Man. Again, yet another situation where, obviously, when you perform at a high level, football can do wonders for you. Scroggins was named as one of the top 100 players in Lions franchise history, and he is a sack leader in all-time Lions history, one of the top in terms of total numbers there. So his on-field production was definitely present. But again, when you're constantly taking all those hits, you can never really be too sure of the kind of toll that it takes on you. And again, the only way, as it has to be stated multiple times, the only way that one can truly confirm whether or not an individual has CTE is if they are dead. That is the only way. And again, yet another case where it's your family is definitely going to, try to move forward as best as they can, proud of what you were able to do on and off the field, but also, again, longing for more of an opportunity to spend time with this person. Like, you can suspect it, but again, there's just no way of knowing at the moment. And it's unfortunate, man. It truly is. Yeah. Yeah, as they say on Sports Illustrated, they aren't necessarily sure if his brain would be donated for research. I don't exactly know why they would, but again, if it's relating to them, the family, wanting to find out whether or not their suspicions were true, well, then they'd probably go through it with it in that situation, I would think. As this quote from neuroscientist at Boston University, Christopher Nowinski states, quote, most will call the 24-hour Boston University CTE Center hotline. The person who responds to the call usually has a network of medical experts across the country who are essentially on call for brain retrievals. They coordinate when the brain retrieval will occur. Could it be at a hospital or a funeral home? Nowinski shared. The expert procures the brain, and then either a courier is hired to fly it to Boston or will be preserved for weeks to harden and then transfer to Boston. End quote. Right. They have those suspicions, but they still have to make the overall decision on whether or not they want to go through with having his brain be tested. So I guess we'll have to see what happens from there. Again, yet another terribly unfortunate situation. And, if it is the case, then it's like, with this quote from USA Today, it might not fall too far out of the realm of possibility. As this entire quote states, Scroggins was one of nearly 5,000 players to file concussion-related lawsuits against the NFL before the league's sweeping concussion settlement in 2015. Scroggins filed an additional claim against the NFL in 2016. His lawyer at the time, Tim Howard, stated his client was suffering from symptoms consistent with CTE. He can't remember where he is or where he's been going, Howard told USA Today Sports in 2016. He hasn't been able to hold a job over the last 6 years. Beyond memory issues, he suffers from depression and has angry outbursts. End quote. So, in this case, if you're telling me, again, just think about this for a second. This is being detailed about him in 2016. And again, those symptoms aren't inherently, strictly CTE symptoms. They could be. They could also be related to a number of other different conditions. That being said, if this is being detailed by the lawyer in 2016, around a decade ago, as unfortunate as it would be to say, we can't guarantee that things didn't get way worse for him in these regards over the last 10. We don't have details on that. Like we had on, again, Kevin Johnson to reference again with him being in a homeless encampment as a result of different developments across his post-playing career. And I brought it up then as well. Like, some of the ways that, these are regarded post-playing career are just tough. Now, again, genuinely, if you make good money as a player, you have to try your best, honestly, to conserve as much as possible. But in a situation with injuries, man, there could be better ways to handle this. There surely could be. And for the last piece of news, Rob Havenstein would retire from the NFL after 11 seasons, mostly with the Rams. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Although, at the same time, again, with some of the material, you're not getting enjoyment out of that. Just take those things into mind. Continue to follow up on these things because, again, some of these situations are far, far from being over. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.